Hello, my friend, and welcome. Okay, so have you ever found yourself in a job that you worked really hard to get and you're really good at it, but it's also kind of sucking the life out of you? And maybe you've got this fantasy where you leave that career and you start doing something else. And maybe instead you're doing your own business and you've got freedom to work when you want and where you want, and you get to spend way more time with your family. Well, that's what today's guest specializes in. Her name is Tracy Harris, and she is the founder of Mums with Hustle, which is dedicated specifically to helping mothers create their own version of success in business and in life. In this show, you are going to hear about why and how Tracy quit her job as a teacher and started her online business, which now grosses over 7 figures a year. And you're going to learn how growing up as a person of color in South Africa and the early death of her father changed her worldview in a way that made living with intention an absolute priority. You're going to learn how Tracy creates her environment to reflect her goals and the kind of person that she wants to be, and how she reprogrammed her brain to level up her self-conception, and how you can do that too. Listen, whether you are a mom or not, if you have ever thought, I'd love to quit my job, but that would be irresponsible, you have got to listen to this.
Breaking news. Your dream life isn't going to happen because you made a vision board. You're going to need goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. This podcast is about getting clarity on what you want, having the grit to do the actual work, and most importantly, constantly training your brain to be your bitch. Ready to be inspired? Here is your host, best-selling author, Una Duncan.
Hey, Tracy Harris, how's it going?
Oh, so good. Pleasure to be here. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy that we finally coordinated our schedules and you can be here. As you guys can hear, Tracy's in Australia, so I'm shooting this late at night, so I get to spend time with this lovely person.
Oh, I am. I'm in the future, so we're already on to the woo-woo. There you go.
Perfect. That's great. Okay, so Tracy, let's kick things off. I would love it if you would start by sharing a little bit about your journey and how your business, Mums with Hustle, came to be.
So prior to having my own business, I was a primary teacher and I was an executive teacher, which meant I was on the leadership team. So I was supporting teachers in being great teachers and having a class of my own. And I really loved that career until I realized that it was not going to give me the vision that I had for my life. And that vision piece and the values essentially really surfaced to bite me in the bum when I became a mother for the first time. And I'm sure other ladies listening to this that have become mothers, they can attest to the fact that you change greatly when you become a mum, but also you realize like this clarity over your goals in your life. And it's a really big time of transition. And so as I was going through that, I was also navigating a bit of a yucky return to work, bit old school, not supportive of new mums re-entering the workplace, gender biases, things like that happening, or undercurrents of that at least.
And as a teacher in Australia, that surprises me.
Yes. And I was met with that fork in the road situation of I either just succumb to the societal norm of, well, you're supposed to live for Fridays and dread Mondays. Every career has good and bad. Like, just suck it up. Like, or just like teachers get a lot of school holidays. Like, surely that makes it all worth it, all of that. And I tried to just get on with it. But the more I saw this little baby in my hands and the more I thought about my future, I could see that I was not on a path that was going to give me that future. So I either had to shift my standard and expectation of the vision for my future, or I don't know, I had to leave and go and do something different that would lead me there. And so, yeah, that's when I left teaching like 9 years ago to do that.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the vision. Why do you think you had such a big vision for your future? Because most people grow up with the vision of, I'm going to get a 9 to 5 and contribute to a pension and have good holidays? Why do you think your vision was bigger than that?
Such a huge question, Una. And I do sometimes think, wow, by the grace of God, my vision was so big, because I look back, I was only 29 years old when this happened. And now I'm supporting people that are, my age or into their 50s, even into their 60s, that are having these realizations for themselves. And so I'm like, well, yeah, why did I have that moment so early on? And for me, it's largely linked to my earliest experiences in life. And the first big experience is that I am a person of color, born in Cape Town, South Africa, in the heart of the apartheid era. And so that meant that we were living under legalized segregation. We were told what schools we could go to, what restaurants we could eat at, what beaches we could go to, all of those sorts of things as colored people. And my parents immigrated and were accepted to come to Australia in 1989, seeking freedom. And I really feel that at a very young age, because I have such vivid memories of being so young, even like being a toddler, my memories are crisp. And I was 5 years old when we left South Africa. And so I remember vividly what it was like living in that time. I remember the emotions, my own emotions and the emotions of family, older people. And I remember the reason for leaving South Africa. And I remember the feeling of freedom and being allowed to just go anywhere or buy any house and start again. And so, yeah, like for me, the origins are rooted in freedom. Like if you are given freedom, you enjoy it and you turn it into something great.
And so, and you were brought up with this idea of if something feels awful, we don't have to accept this.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
That's
okay,
the
great.
example from my parents.
I love that. Yeah. What an amazing thing to pass down to your children. That sense of we don't have to accept things that suck. So it was 9 years ago and you decided my teaching career will not give me this vision that I have for my life. And that is becoming more painful now that I've got this beautiful child. So then what happened?
Well, the second defining moment in my life happened when I was 17 years old. And that is when my dad was diagnosed with cancer and died 6 months later at 46 years old. So that again for me really made the penny drop. Like when people say life is short, like you got to make the most of it, that was no longer lip service. That was a lived experience. And through that lived experience, I just started literally living like that, living like life is short. And doing things like future scripting exercises and thinking about what do I want my life to look like? Okay, am I on path for that based on the choices I'm making in this present day, based on the thoughts that I have, the people I'm surrounding myself with? Am I on path to that? And the answer was no. And so then I had to be like, oh my gosh, well, how do I get that? And the answer was simple, but not necessarily easy to do because, I had all of my psychological stuff wrapped up in the identity that I had at that point, which was I was the first person in both sides of my family to ever get a university degree. I had 3 degrees as a teacher, including just having finished my master's the year before. I had an insane study debt, which I don't know why the world tends to celebrate like debt when it's studies, but not debt when it's you investing in your business and yourself. But anyway, that's another conversation. And so I was just like, oh, and then, that the voice, the ego voice, like, oh, your parents sacrificed everything to come to this country so that you could have this great education, you go to uni, and now you're like chucking it all out basically to start this online business that hasn't been validated. Like I had all of those thoughts there. Yeah, but I was just like, no, those thoughts aren't helpful. I'm going to just shove them to the side. I'm literally going to reprogram my brain. I'm going to get a new personality, and I'm going to become the person that has a successful, at the time, I wanted a 6-figure online business. It's now a multi-million-dollar online business. I'm going to retire my husband. We're going to live this life of freedom. I'm going to impact as many lives as I can. Like, I'm going to be that person that does things and teaches her audience how to do it too. And that is literally what I did. But yes, it was full of many, many challenges. That sounds like the short, fun version. But we all know, if as entrepreneurs, what's involved there.
So what's so interesting for me listening to that story is that all of those thoughts that you had, my parents were immigrants and they gave me this amazing opportunity. I've just got my master's. I've got all this debt. I mean, those sound really believable to me. How did you know that those thoughts weren't necessarily true and that you could choose different thoughts and that those were not the thoughts that would get you the future that you desired? I mean, that sounds like some next level personal work that not a lot of people would have had access to.
Yeah. So it was an old Tony Robbins tape that I found.
Yeah.
Well, my husband introduced to me, and he was like, "Oh, you got to listen to this guy. It's Tony Robbins, da-da-da. Everyone's listening to him at the moment." And I was like, all right, I'll give this a go. And he was talking about how he was the janitor and like he had visualized this house and, you know, his dream home and all of these things. And I was just like, well, why not? Like, why not me? Why can't I try this? I'll give this a go. I'm going to visualize, you know, my dream life or my dream home or my family and my ideal day. And what would that look like? And I just started there. I just gave myself permission to imagine. And I did. I learned about the brain and neuroplasticity. And as a teacher, I already knew that. Like, I was supporting my students in the classroom with, you know, growth mindset, not fixed mindset. You can learn anything. You can rewire. In the classroom, I was teaching the kids, like, you know, the 8 habits of mind, like success habits, things like metacognition, thinking about our thinking, that as humans, we have the ability to do that. So what's the thought that led to the behavior? Like, that was already there for me as just like little sparks. But then I was able to form the connections with that and what Tony was saying. And I was like, I'm going to give this a go and just see how this pans out.
Do you know, I listened to Tony Robbins' Personal Power cassette tapes when I was 16.
Oh, yeah, shout out to Tony. Totally. So then you decided, I want to start an online business and I want to make it massively successful. And then I want to help other people do the same thing. But what was the original idea for the online business? Because I feel like people would be listening and be like, sure, I'd love to do that too, but I don't know what I would do a business about. Did you already know? Yeah. No. So the process for coming up with the business, all I knew at this point is what I wanted my life to look like. And so I always teach my mentees, when we are creating our life by design and our freedom-filled business, we have to think about who we are at our core, at our essence. Okay, what are your core values? Like, who are you? What makes you tick? And then we have to look at our joy, which is really our vision for our life. What is it that you want? What is it that you don't want? Like, what brings you joy? All of those things. And then you have to look at your genius. Like, what are the things that come most naturally to you? Who is it that your friends or your work colleagues say that you are or come to you for? What is so effortless for you that other people go, oh gosh, how do you do that? Where is it that you lose time? You lose sense of time because doing a particular thing is just so fun for you. And then, of course, finding a need in the marketplace for that thing. So that was kind of my process. But to give you a little backstory of how I even came to know that having an online business was a thing that people did, because this is like a decade ago. And here in Australia, it was so new. I hadn't heard of anyone doing that here in Australia. And so I was still a teacher. I was commuting to work 11 years ago, 10 years ago, and I had already heard of Tony. And then I was listening to Pat Flynn's podcast, and it was called Smart Passive Income. And I would listen to that on my commute to work. And that was the first time I ever had it placed in my awareness that there are people that have created businesses on the internet. Prior to that, I didn't know that that was a thing. Like other than like eBay.
Right,
but you know, that's physical product, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you heard it, were you like, ting, ting, that's me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there were literal examples. There were people on there talking about how they transferred their skill set and their genius into an online modality, an education style of business, in the form usually of an online course or ebooks and things like that. And then they were selling them online through content marketing. And as a teacher, again, my connections, I was like, oh, these people are creating learning experiences. These people they've got learning intentions, they've got outcomes for their students, and they're taking them on a learning journey or experience in the modality of an online course. And so I was like, I can do that. I can take skills that I have and put them into online trainings and teach that. But what I didn't want to do was I didn't want to do anything to do with my degrees or teaching at all. Like I think I was partly burned, but also partly bored. And I just wanted new. Like I wanted a new career. So my business now as it stands, like, no, it's got absolutely nothing to do with being a primary teacher or teaching a child how to read or anything like that at all. I teach mums how to create digital businesses in the form of courses, memberships, masterminds, so that they can have their own freedom-filled life on their own terms. And I teach them how to grow audiences on Instagram and then create really stellar standout experiences inside of those containers by being kick-ass facilitators, really. So that's what I do. I basically am teaching them how to do what I have done over the past 9 years.
Yeah. And but how did you start, since you couldn't start there? What was the first thing that you taught?
The first thing that I taught was an Instagram course that I still have for sale to this day because it is tried and true, and it is called #Hustle, and it teaches you how to master hashtags and get in front of new audiences and work with the algorithm in terms of keywords and hashtags on your Instagram content. The reason that course, like such a narrow, specific thing, came to be is because when I started my business, obviously I'd been listening to Pat Flynn and I was like, okay, I've got to have a podcast. And then for your podcast, you have to drive your own traffic to your podcast. So I need to pick a social media marketing platform. Facebook felt like old, if I'm honest. It felt old and boring. And yeah, just like all of the aunties and the people that I didn't want watching me, they were there, if I'm honest. So my motivation was strong for getting on Instagram, which was a new up-and-coming platform that I had seen a lot of small business owners using to sell handmade items and physical things. I was like, I'm going to plant my flag here and build my home base here on Instagram and drive traffic to my podcast from here. And so that's what I did. And about 6 months into having the podcast, my audience started to ask me, like, how are you growing this Instagram audience? You've been here for less than I have. And so I just started teaching them my strategies and I bundled it up into a course.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the name of your business, Mums with Hustle, because as I understand it, it sounds like you're almost anti-hustle culture. Like you're more about prioritizing family and self-care and freedom-filled lives. Like, tell me about that concept of hustling and versus allowing flow, having a freedom-filled life versus a hustle-filled life.
Yes, it's kind of confusing, right? So the name of my podcast is Mums with Hustle. And up until 2020, midway through 2020, my business was also called Mums with Hustle. But in 2020, I rebranded into be a personal brand. So it's tracyharris.co. That is the name of my business. But the podcast and the Instagram handle have remained Mums with Hustle. And I feel like at the time when I chose that name, I did so with a real positive, healthy way of looking at the word hustle, especially as it applied to us as mothers. And I had a unique take and a unique perspective that maybe a lot of other people didn't share. For me, hustle is about, okay, the baby is down for the nap. We got to hustle. We got to get our work done now. Or, okay, we don't have the same amount of time that everybody else has. And quite often, not the same amount of resources and even support that other people have. So we have to have that radical responsibility and get our hustle on when we have the opportunity. We can't slow down out of fear. We have no time for procrastination to kick in and all these self-sabotaging behaviors. It's like you've got a 1 hour nap time or 20 minutes sometimes. You need to know what the next best thing is that you need to do, and you need to be able to do it without resistance. That is the hustle. That's what it was. But then people started like toxic hustle culture, and it must mean that we never rest and da-da-da. Let me tell you, I rest a lot, like more than most types. I am resting a lot. And so, yeah, I'm very in my feminine. I rest a lot. Hustle actually comes into a framework that I have and that I teach inside of my community. It's called Fresh, because I believe that we have to be a little fresh in order to be free. And the F stands for fitness and our nutrition. We have to be working on that as a minimum. Yeah. Our R is the relationships piece. Our E is our environment that we curate according to our design and our energy. Our S is our self. So looking after ourself, our self-love, our joy, our desire, all of that every single day. And last is the H, which is the hustle, because we can't just sit around all day and talk about our mindset and the woo-woo stuff and not actually do any work. We need the feminine with the masculine. So the hustle is there. That's us creating aligned offers, having strategy, being a great leader in our team, the aligned marketing, all of the things. That's the H, that's the hustle. So yeah, that's where it fits in. But I love that question so much.
Well, I love that Fresh. It's fantastic. I obviously totally agree with fitness. Fitness has got to come first. You got to take care of yourself. Relationships, perfect. Environment. I want to ask you a little bit about that. Tell me about creating an intentional environment.
Oh, so when I first did my future scripting exercise, and I put pen to paper and I started thinking about what does my ideal day look like? Because you know that once you've done that, the manifestation principles are that you start embodying that person in the now. And so for me, like when I did these visualizations and I was thinking about my future life, my ideal day, I was like, well, she's got fresh flowers on her table every week. And she is drinking the most fresh, delicious, nourishing smoothies every day from a beautiful cup. And so then I was like, hang on a second. Once you've done your future scripting of your ideal day, what parts of that you saw in your visualization can you actually bring into your now? And that's the environment piece. It was like, why don't I just put fresh flowers on my table every week? I can actually do that. Even if it means I go without something, if it's that important to me and my future self has that, I'm going to prioritize putting that on my table. And I'm going to start having the daily delicious smoothies. And my future self gets a wash and blow dry every single week. So guess what, everyone? Other things are going out of the household budget so that mum can do this. I literally started there. So that's environment in terms of my home. But also my physical body is an environment. If you don't like the clothes that you're wearing, get new ones. Or learn how to style the ones that you've got so that they do look banging on you, you know.
Yeah.
If you want the hair, that's like, if you feel your best self and you're more likely to do video on your socials when you've got this beautiful bouncy blowout, go and get that weekly. So that is what the environment is, but it extends to energy too, in terms of like the environments that you choose to place yourself in. Obviously, coming from my background, I did not know a single millionaire, to the point that when I was in grade 5 here in Australia, I was put in a little group of kids that needed the teacher for some assistance with our mathematics. We were learning the concept of thousands, hundreds, tens, units. I was just not getting it. And that's because I did not have the concept of thousands of what? No one made 1,000 anything. Like, let alone people moving on and talking about millions. I couldn't conceive that. Millions? Like, no one has 1,000 jelly beans where I'm from, or 1,000 anything. Like, what is 1,000? That number was just way too big and just like a thing out there that other people have, but not me, not where I'm from, not us. And so I had to curate an environment for myself where I was putting myself in proximity to people that were experiencing what I was looking to create for myself. And no, I didn't have the financial means to join masterminds straight away, but I did have the means to listen to podcasts and consume their content. So that was me. That was environment for me. And then I did have the means to purchase their books and eventually to purchase their courses and eventually to join the masterminds and sit in those spaces. So like actively curating my environment in terms of the people, my circle, who I was with, my friends, my physical body, and then my household and the spaces that I work. So that's the E.
Oh, I love that so much. And the S is self, and giving yourself pleasure. And we talked a little bit about this before, but tell me about some of those rituals for you and how they benefit you.
Yes. So if we don't fill our own bucket, and I mean to the point where it's overflowing, like everyone gets the overflow. That's the thing. People get your overflow. So you need to fill your own cup or fill your own bucket. And for me, I do that through my daily practices. I am, for the most part, an early riser, waking up before my kids. There are times where I don't want to be an early riser and I just want to sleep in. So then I also do, like I just honor my energy. But for the most part, I'm an early riser. I have my prayer ritual. I've got my journal next to my bed. I wake up, I move my body, like I exercise. I've created an environment where it's impossible for me to almost not exercise. I love my space. I love my equipment. It's so fun for me. So that has set me up for success. And then I come out and I've built the capacity and the energy to pour into the key relationships that I have. So time with my husband, time with my kids because they're awake at this stage. You know, we all walk together to school. Like it's so beautiful. And that is our every single day, like during the week. And yeah, like I think the secret to that is prioritizing myself and enough rest, but also creating energy for myself. I have about 4 long, luscious baths a week. And I'm talking like the Epsom salts are coming out, the candle is on, the essential oils are there. And I choose that time for me of an evening, like 4 times a week. And I'm like, yeah, everything else can wait, whether there's housework or, you know, maybe hubby wants to sit and watch something on the TV together. I'm like, I'm going to do my bath and then I'm going to come out and do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, I love this. And I just feel like people would be listening thinking, oh, must be nice for you to get to sleep in when you're tired. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't just go ahead and like create an amazing workout space for myself. Like I hear people saying, yeah, but privilege. And then I'm guessing what you're saying is, well, yes. And you don't have to have this level of privilege in order to care for yourself. Is that what you would say? Tell me more about, answer that. Like the people who are like,
100%.
Must be nice for you.
Yes, because it wasn't always like this. And every season is different. You know, like for 6 years, I breastfed my babies on demand whenever they wanted, like however many times a night, however many times in the day, you know. So I have been there where I was like early rising, waking up before the kids, never, like unsubscribe from anyone who suggests that mothers should be waking up earlier, because every ounce of sleep mattered to me in that season. But I think, you know, we just take what fits and we adjust as we move into other seasons, and we don't get caught up comparing ourselves to others. The fresh analogy is there for everybody, but for everybody, it's going to look different because your life is different. You have access to different levels of support in your life. But it doesn't mean that you can't do anything. You've got, you know, children that are different ages or, you know, multiple jobs or whatever is going on. So fitness, relationships, environment, self, hustle, like that is all the ball is in your court, and you get to design what that looks like, and you get to do that with self-compassion and without being a victim and without comparing yourself to other people.
Oh, I love that answer. I love that answer. And I know that you help moms specifically, empower moms to start amazing businesses, to create a life that they want to live with intention. Why do you think moms needed specific language and instruction about this?
Well, there are so many voices out there saying that mothers can't do these things, or mothers shouldn't do these things, or this is what a good mum does. Or, you know, the societal norms that once you have your baby, you know, that's it. Like you should just stay home and be content with that. Nothing wrong with it. If that is what feels aligned and you feel energized and excited by that. But for many of us, we are ambitious and we have capacity and desire to do both. And we live in a time where we are privileged enough to be able to do that. And so as mothers, we come into entrepreneurship with a very unique circumstance, with unique limitations, with a unique like set of self-talk, should stories, things like that. It's very different. So, you know, people even tell me, and I myself have experienced this, feeling the weight of risk when you are a parent. Like you have to think about where you're spending your money, not just because of yourself, but because, you know, you've got these little people.
That's right.
Like the responsibility level is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And so it's just like, and then your time freedom is different. You've got to, you know, you work around children. Their school holidays, things like that. Just today I had someone in my community share, it's our summer break at the time that we're recording this, Una, and parents have had kids at home for 7 weeks during the summer.
It's a special time.
And yes. And so, you know, for a lot of these women, they don't have their partners or a spouse at home. And that person is working out of the home. And so even though they are a digital entrepreneur or they've got their online business, during times of school holidays, they are still the primary parent and primary carer, meaning you've got this little person at home. And so, you know, there's added complexities of, oh my gosh, it's school holidays. I really want to make sure my child isn't having too much screen time and they're not feeling ignored by me and all of these things. But at the same time, I'm running a team. I have a business. Like I don't work outside of the home. I'm in the home and just wondering like, how is my child perceiving that? Do they understand? And like, are they okay? Am I damaging them? Like those are the sorts of things that a lot of the women encounter. So it is very different. And it's important that we address that and we use words and share experiences that are common and normalize it so that more mothers can thrive in business.
That's a good point, because I would say in none of the entrepreneurial groups that I've been in, which are mostly run by men, has that ever come up. What about my kids watching too many screens because I'm here running my business? I've just never heard a dude bring that up.
I know. And some people will be like, well, what's that got to do with anything? And it's like, well, my mind is distracted. Or I feel like I have to compartmentalize when I'm being mum, I'm being mum. And when I'm working on my business, I'm working on my business, because otherwise this constant context switching is zapping my brain calories and lowering my capacity to problem solve in my business, but also my patience for my child.
Which is unfair.
And having the courage to say that, like, you know, I love holding space for those honest conversations. And I remember when the only spaces that I could go to 9 years ago were run by men. And I'm so grateful that they held those spaces. But also I had to have courage to walk into those rooms with my stroller and, you know, nurse a baby in the back corner and know that I was literally the only one doing that, and have everyone turning around and looking at me like, are you lost? Oh no, she's here for the business conference as well. Like, that was weird.
Oh, that's great. Do you know what's so funny, Tracy? I've often said, if you have an extra couple of bucks to spend on your fitness, for a lot of women, the best way they can spend that money is a housekeeper, a babysitter. That is the best money you can spend towards your personal wellness. And I'm guessing that's probably one of the best business investments as well.
Oh, totally. And I have both of those things now, but I didn't at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, you said, I didn't know any millionaires. And now you get to be that aspirational picture that people can be like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, maybe I can do it too. When I look at your Instagram, what I think, and you tell me how true this is, I feel like Tracy spends her life going on amazing vacations with her kids, dating her cute husband, and leading incredible experiences for her people. And the whole time she's got phenomenal hair and wicked outfits.
Oh, thank you so much.
So is
that is my higher self. Perfect. Like, that is like, if I had to script what's going on in my life, like, that is what I would want to write. So I'm really glad that comes through.
Awesome.
And I do that a lot. Like, last year we traveled for 11 weeks out of the year, spread over the year, not all in one go. And it was beautiful and it was amazing. And again, that comes down to this value of freedom. And we choose to travel that much and invest that much of our money into travel and memories and experiences, again, from that place of, well, I know what it's like to not have freedom and to be told that you can't go anywhere and that you have to be here. And so it's like, I've been given this freedom. Yes, I'm going to spend my money on travel, where other people might go, you spent what on travel? You could have put that into your house. I'm like, no, we choose to live below our means with our house so that we can invest in travel and experiences. We're not car people. Like, it's about, like, we are choosing very consciously what we do with our money and our fun and our time. And I think that, again, that's a responsibility thing. Like, if you truly value travel, then spend your money there, and who cares what your house looks like for a while or forever. Like, we would always choose travel over living in a fancy home.
Yeah, me too. And not everyone would choose that. So this comes back to living and choosing your life with intention, which is, I think, what you help people do. And so how do you help them figure out what that dream life looks like for them?
When I was about 2 years into growing this online business, Una, my husband made the very brave decision, like with me together, to leave his corporate job. And the primary motive behind that was not that, you know, my business was making enough money to replace the wage that he was making from that job. It was, we can't pay you at all. So we're going to be taking a really big backstep financially in this family. But what we are buying is freedom for you to be here with the kids when they're young, in their baby years, and we're buying time, which we'll never get back. We'll never get that time back. And so financially, we made a decision that most people won't allow themselves to make. And we didn't care if that meant having to buy toys and things from secondhand or whatever. And I did do that for a period of time. But what we were choosing was family and love in our home. And it's like that to me is life by design. And I've got some friends that have just made that really beautiful decision for themselves as well. They have moved out of their primary home and into it's called a granny flat. I don't know if that translates. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So an in-law suite.
Yeah. They've got this tiny little home, on their property. It's just got one bedroom, one bathroom, like an open kitchenette sort of vibe. And they've got two little girls. And they told us, they're like, we would rather bring less income into our household and be happy than live for Fridays and dread Mondays. And we'd rather both be able to walk our girls to school instead of one of us be around while the other misses out and play into gender stereotypes. So we are choosing to rent out our primary home and put ourselves and the girls in the granny flat so that we can have that. And I was like, that is living your life by design. That is putting your values at the front of everything. And trust me, the universe shifts and rearranges itself to bless you when you live from that space of values and vision and just complete faith that you will be okay. And that is the big thing. So you can start from nothing. I had terrible anxiety and depression. I was seeing a therapist. Work sucked. I gave away that career. I was terrified. We had a brand new mortgage, a brand new baby. I was like, how the heck are we going to afford any of this? Yeah, to start an online business. But it was exciting and it felt nice. And so I just kind of ran with it in full faith that I'm going to put in my absolute best. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, that's okay. We do live in a privileged world, in a privileged country. I can go and get another job or, whatever, have a career change. I'd already pegged out a clothing store, Una, that I loved shopping at. And I was like, I could go and work there and just do some casual hours. I love fashion. I love putting looks together. I'd actually be really happy dressing women and making them feel beautiful in cute outfits, even though I can't afford to buy any clothes right now. So I had that. It's like, nothing's that bad. It's okay. Everything is figure outable.
Yeah. I actually had a guest on this podcast who specializes in helping people make no regret decisions. And she said, as long as you make decisions in alignment with your values, then you will never regret making that decision, even if the decision doesn't go the way you thought it would. So in your case, you're like, if we go for this online business thing, I will never regret it. Even if it means I'm going to end up in a clothing store, that's fine because I went for what I wanted to. I lived my life with intention and I went and I made a decision according to my values.
Yeah, because I've done the opposite, which is when I ignored all of the feelings in my body and I ended up with anxiety and depression and, a patch of alopecia on my head and from constantly trying to just force myself to stay in this workplace that was out of alignment for me. So I tried that and that felt horrible. And I wanted to be a good mum. I wanted to be a healthy mum. I didn't want to have anxiety and depression in my body. I wanted to fall pregnant again eventually, but be healed. And so I was like, okay, I need to go. I need to exit this career and fix myself and live in alignment with my values and just trust that everything else is going to work out. And it did. And I'm extremely grateful, but I love supporting people to do the same because it's hard. You have to think differently and you're going to constantly have people saying, poo-pooing on your dreams or saying, oh, that's not really wise, or, oh, what about that university degree? Have you even paid it off? And you're like, now going to do this. And it's so easy to go back into the old. That's what it's about for me. Like losing my dad at such a young age, I was just like, if you died tomorrow, could you say that you prioritize the things that were most important to you? That's what it's about. So, that is my thing for every single one of us.
I love it. I know so many people are going to be asking themselves that question and maybe wanting your help. What's the best way for people to learn about you and your work?
I would love for people to come over and say hi to me in the DMs on Instagram. I am at Mums with Hustle. Now, being Australian, it's MUMS with Hustle. There's no underscores or anything like that. So come and please say hi. It's really me responding in the DMs because I believe in being in close proximity to your people and listening to them and being present and supporting them. So come and say hi. My podcast is on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and Google Podcasts, all the places. It's called Mums with Hustle. And my website is tracyharris.co.
Thank you. And do you have a final word for anyone who's listening to this today who is a mom who feels that she's stuck in a job that she kind of hates, but she feels like she can't leave, that it would be irresponsible, but she does have a vision for her ideal life and her ideal family life, and she really wants to make a move, but she's scared?
Yeah, it is scary because we're stepping into something that we don't know yet. We haven't encountered it yet. It doesn't even exist yet. And yet we're embarking on this path towards that thing and leaving what is familiar. And just because something is familiar does not mean that it is either safe or the best thing for you. And that is literally how our brain is designed. And so for me, the best thing that I ever did was go and learn about how the brain thinks and how it's wired so that I could hack it, so that I could literally do the opposite of what my natural responses wanted to be, which is, nope, don't try that. That's not safe. Or no, don't do that. It won't work. Well, no, just trusting that if you basically do the opposite, you're going to change your life bit by bit, thought by thought. And that's how it is. It's in those micro thoughts, because 95% of the thoughts that you think today are the same thoughts that you've thought every other day before this. It is very hard to create change in your life if you are thinking the same thoughts. It's actually impossible. It's the thoughts that lead to our behaviors. So change your thoughts and change your behaviors. That is like the number one thing. And just start little. Start so small. I did not have the goals of the life that I have now. I had like way smaller goals. My first business goal was, if I could just make $49,000 a year, that would have replaced my teacher wage. And that to me was like my blue sky dreaming. And that was enough for me to press go. And so, even start small. Nothing wrong with little goals, but yes, master your thoughts and just take those little tiny action steps. And
Perfect.
That's it.
Perfect.
You can do it.
You can do it. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you so much. And I really do welcome any conversations about that. Understand I threw out many big concepts. Sometimes in my examples, it's likely that some context was missing. And so people might be like, what? Like, of course you can do that. And that's easy for you. But I'm like, I truly want you to come and ask your questions, because I'm happy to help point you in the direction of some of my free content that can help you see how it's possible too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. When she said, just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's safe, it reminded me of a story that I heard from Jim Carrey. And I think it was on a YouTube video of a commencement speech that he gave once. And by the way, if you haven't seen that speech, it is totally worth Googling. It's as hilarious as you'd expect it to be from Jim Carrey, but it's also really profound.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
So you might not love the same things that Tracy loves. Last year, I had the amazing experience of going on a road trip with two of my oldest and best friends. And one morning for breakfast, we were in this cafe in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and we did this exercise to uncover our top values. And one of my top values was adventure, which is probably how I ended up in the same mastermind for entrepreneurs as Tracy. But my longtime lovely friend, one of her top values was stability and reliability. And so living a life by design for my friend looks very different than it does for me. My point is that this episode isn't about blowing up your life and blow drying your hair and starting an online business, unless that's what lights you up. It's about being honest with what is important to you and making sure that you do that during your one and only life on this planet. All right, until next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.